They say the frontier will test your limits, but sometimes it tests your heart in ways you never could have imagined. Out here in the dust and tumbleweeds, reputations can crumble as quickly as a saloon's whiskey hits the tongue. When Lucy Addison arrived in Dodge City off the Atchison, Topeka and Santa Fe Railway, she believed she was stepping into the promise of a new start, a mail-order bride set to marry the man who'd sent for her. But one secret threatened to destroy everything. Lucy was already pregnant. And just when she thought all was lost, an unlikely stranger stood up and claimed the unborn child as his own. Lucy Addison's bones ached from days of rattling along the tracks of the Atchison, Topeka and Santa Fe Railway. Her eyes stung from the grit that seeped through the carriage windows, and her mind swam with a medley of hope and dread. With each creak of the train's wheels, she was propelled closer to Dodge City, a place she had only read about in newspapers. It was rumored to be wild and untamed, but also ripe with opportunity. To Lucy it represented a lifeline, a second chance to escape the shame she had left behind in Boston. Clutching a small valise against her side, she peered out the window at the sprawling plains, so different from the cobblestone streets and tall row houses of her eastern hometown. She had answered Jeremiah Caldwell's advertisement for a mail-order bride meticulously typed and posted in a Boston paper. Jeremiah was a rancher in Kansas, an industrious man, seeking a wife to share in both his burdens and joys. For Lucy, who was burdened with a secret she couldn't possibly reveal in a letter, the arrangement felt like a gamble. But gambles were all she had left. When the train screeched to a stop, Lucy wrapped a threadbare shawl around her shoulders and carefully descended onto the makeshift wooden platform. The sweltering heat and relentless sun nearly overwhelmed her. She caught a glimpse of her reflection in the window, a pale face framed by chestnut curls, eyes burning with apprehension. Somewhere beneath the fear flickered a spark of determination. She would make this work no matter the cost. A crowd milled around the platform, filled with cowboys, soldiers, and traveling families, jostling about in search of luggage or friendly faces. Lucy stood uncertainly scanning for Jeremiah Caldwell. She expected a neat sign with her name, or at least a cordial wave. Instead, she saw only a sea of strangers. Her heart sank. Perhaps he was late. Perhaps something had happened. Just as she was about to turn to a porter for help, a tall man wearing a weathered hat appeared from behind a stack of crates. His brow was furrowed, and his hand hovered at the tip of his holster, a man of caution. "Lucy Addison?" he asked in a clipped tone. She nodded, clutching her valise a bit tighter. "Yes, I'm Lucy Addison. Are you Jeremiah?" He nodded curtly. His gaze swept over her from head to toe, eyes narrowing. "You're shorter than I expected," he said, his voice devoid of warmth. The weight of his scrutiny pressed down on Lucy. She forced a polite smile, reminding herself that first impressions could be deceiving. "I hope the journey wasn't too taxing on you." "I'm excited to start our new life on your ranch." Jeremiah exhaled sharply, giving a brief nod. "Welcome to Dodge, Miss Addison. Let's get you settled." Lucy braced herself for whatever came next, trying her best to swallow her rising anxiety. Little did she know that this unspoken tension was only the beginning. The journey from the train station to Jeremiah's ranch took the better part of an hour by wagon. Dodge City gave way to rolling prairies dotted with scrub brush and occasional cattle. Lucy's tension grew with each jolt of the wheels over rutted paths. Jeremiah offered little conversation. Now and then he commented on the dryness of the season, or the stubbornness of the local steers, as if he was more accustomed to speaking with ranch hands than a prospective bride. When they finally arrived, Lucy was greeted by an expansive vista of open land. A cluster of rugged outbuildings formed the ranch's main compound. The dusty corral fence needed repair in several places, and the porch of the main house had a missing plank that threatened to trip the unwary. Despite the obvious need for upkeep, Lucy felt a small ripple of relief. This was her home now, even if it didn't fit the tidy picture she'd imagined. Jeremiah hopped down from the wagon, his boots landing with a dull thud. He extended a hand to help her. She accepted stepping onto the packed dirt, her eyes adjusting to the bright Kansas sun. "I'll have Cooper see to the horses," Jeremiah muttered, gesturing to a wiry stable hand approaching from behind a barn. Inside the ranch house, Lucy found it sparse. A long wooden table filled most of the main room. A few chairs were scattered about, and the fireplace was blackened with soot. It wasn't cozy, but it was functional, much like the man who owned it. Jeremiah showed her to a small bedroom adjacent to the kitchen, a room with little more than a bed, a trunk, and a small dresser. It was enough, Lucy told herself, to start anew. "Your quarters," Jeremiah said, matter-of-factly, crossing his arms as he hovered in the doorway. "We're not married yet, so you'll stay in here. I'll be in the room at the front of the house." His tone was neither affectionate nor unkind, simply stating how things would be. Lucy nodded, feeling the first true pangs of discomfort. She expected Jeremiah to be distant at first. After all, the two of them were practically strangers. But there was something unsettled in his gaze, as though he were eyeing a horse he wasn't sure he wanted to keep. As if to ward off her mounting unease, Lucy busied herself with unpacking. She opened her valise, carefully removing her few cherished possessions: a hairbrush, a pair of gloves, 2 modest dresses, and a well-worn copy of the King James Bible from her mother. Hidden at the bottom, wrapped in a handkerchief, were 2 secrets: a small cameo necklace and a letter from the father of her unborn child. She felt a wave of guilt crash over her. Jeremiah expected a wife. He'd never voiced any expectation beyond that. But Lucy knew what a man like Jeremiah wanted: someone to manage the home, raise children, his children, and stand by him. How would he react if he discovered she was with child already, and not by him? She inhaled deeply, reminding herself that she had come too far to turn back now. That night, Lucy lay awake on the stiff mattress, moonlight casting shadows across the walls. Jeremiah was just a few steps away, separated by a wooden door and the silence of mutual unease. Outside, she heard the low bellow of cattle and the whisper of wind through the tall grass. It was a lonely lullaby, one that matched her inner dread. She had only just arrived, and already the secret she carried began to feel like a noose tightening around her neck. Over the next few days, Lucy tried her best to make the ranch house feel more like a home. She cleaned the fireplace, polished the table, and even attempted to sew a new curtain for the bedroom window. Each morning, she rose before dawn to prepare Jeremiah's breakfast. At first, he offered only gruff nods of appreciation, but slowly, he seemed to soften just a fraction, thanking her for the hot coffee and warm biscuits with a halting politeness. The ranch hands gave Lucy a wide berth, unsure how to act around the boss's soon-to-be wife. Nevertheless, she tried to be friendly, greeting them with a smile as they came and went. Some, like Cooper, tipped their hats with a polite ma'am. Others, jaded by the harshness of frontier life, barely offered more than a passing glance. In the afternoons, Lucy wandered the property's perimeter, collecting wildflowers and letting the sun warm her cheeks. Occasionally, she felt a flutter inside her, faint but unmistakable, a reminder that she was no longer living just for herself. With each day that Flutter grew stronger, demanding acknowledgement. She would rest her palm against her belly, feeling both protective and terrified. Would Jeremiah react with anger if he discovered the truth? Or would he understand that she was a victim of circumstances beyond her control? One afternoon, while Lucy was picking blossoms near the barn, Jeremiah approached her. His hat shaded his intense gaze, and the lines of his face were set in a firm expression that she struggled to read. "Miss Addison," he began, clearing his throat awkwardly, "I realize this arrangement is somewhat unconventional. I'm not used to having a lady around." She tucked a stray curl behind her ear, trying to hide her nerves. "I understand. It's not any easier for me, though. I'm grateful for the chance you're giving me." Jeremiah studied her face, as if searching for sincerity. Then his gaze drifted to the small bunch of wildflowers in her hand. With a hesitant motion, he reached out and touched one, a yellow cone flower. "My ma used to pick those," he said quietly. She said they brightened the table. Lucy felt a surge of warmth at the hint of sentimentality. "Maybe I can put them in a vase for the kitchen," she offered with a hopeful smile. Jeremiah nodded, taking a step back as if the nearness of her unsettled him. "Dinner will be in a few hours," he said simply, then turned and walked away. Later that day, as Lucy placed the flowers in a chipped ceramic vase and centered it on the dining table, she caught Jeremiah's eyes lingering on her. There was a flicker of something there, acceptance, perhaps, or curiosity. She tried to hold on to that glimmer, praying that when her secret came to light, he might show the same gentle understanding. Yet in the recesses of her mind, a darker voice reminded her that the frontier was no place for leniency. If Jeremiah felt deceived or dishonored, he could cast her out, leaving her with nothing but the merciless prairies and a child she had no means to support. And so Lucy decided she had to wait for the right moment, hoping somehow that fate or providence would intervene before it was too late. Lucy's secret weighed heavier by the day. She tried to hide her growing figure beneath loose dresses, but as the weeks passed, subtle changes became more noticeable. Her cheeks were fuller. Her appetite had grown, and occasionally she felt a wave of sickness. She used excuses when Jeremiah asked why she had overslept or why she nibbled on soda crackers at odd hours. One evening, after a day of relentless heat, the sky exploded in a thunderstorm. Rain hammered the ranch house, drenching the parched earth and unleashing lightning that illuminated the plains. Jeremiah and Lucy had just finished supper, a quiet affair, when a sudden crash of thunder startled her so violently she dropped her plate. It shattered, drawing Jeremiah's gaze like a magnet. Startled, Lucy sank to her knees, frantically picking up shards. A flash of lightning lit the room, revealing tears in her eyes. Instantly, Jeremiah was there beside her, gently taking her hand away from the broken china. "Don't cut yourself," he murmured, gathering the pieces himself. For a moment, Lucy clutched at his sleeve, the terror and the guilt colliding inside her. She felt a sudden hard twist in her stomach, a spasm that felt dangerously close to the pangs of approaching motherhood. Her eyes darted up to see if Jeremiah noticed. Concern laced his face, though she doubted he understood the cause. "So sorry," she whispered, letting him help her to her feet. I've been on edge." Jeremiah studied her with an intensity she found disarming. For the first time, Lucy realized he might be more perceptive than she gave him credit for. "It's a bad storm," he said. "But it'll pass." The moment felt heavy with unsaid words. Lucy wanted to spill everything to tell him about her predicament. The father of her child was long gone. He had promised marriage, taken advantage of her innocence, then vanished. She'd been left in ruin, scorned by her own father, who had threatened to cast her out if she did not find a proper husband quickly. That was the impetus for answering Jeremiah's ad. But how to explain all this now, standing in the middle of a kitchen in a thunderstorm? She opened her mouth, trembling. Thunder boomed again, rattling the windows. Her courage wavered, and she let the moment slip away. "I'm sorry," she repeated, her eyes lowered. Jeremiah exhaled, placing the broken shards onto the table. "You should rest," he said, voice gentler than usual. "I'll handle the rest of the cleanup." Lucy's relief clashed with self-loathing. She offered a nod of thanks and walked away, feeling the weight of her burden multiply. She stood at her bedroom window for a long time that night, watching the downpour turn the yard into a muddy swamp. She wished with all her heart that the rain could wash away her secret. But that was impossible. The child's faint stirring reminded her that life was not so easily hidden. What she didn't realize was that fate was already spinning its own merciless plan to unravel the truth. The summer heat wrapped around the ranch like a vice, making every breath feel like drawing fire into the lungs. The sun hung oppressively overhead, bleaching the grass and casting long, wavering shadows along the dusty yard. Lucy had felt faint since morning. The persistent throb behind her eyes and the dizzy spells had grown harder to ignore, so she retreated to the modest room Jeremiah had given her, hoping a few moments of stillness might quiet the storm churning inside her. She lay on the narrow bed, one hand resting instinctively on the slight swell of her stomach. The child stirred a faint flutter, like butterfly wings brushing against her insides. It should have been a moment of comfort. Instead, a wave of dread swept over her. Her secret was no longer something she could keep buried beneath baggy dresses and carefully chosen silences. It was blooming uncontrollably, undeniably, and the truth was catching up with her faster than she could prepare for its consequences. Her thoughts were a whirlwind when the door burst open. "Lucy!" Jeremiah's voice was low and sharp, barely containing a rage that had clearly been building. He stood in the doorway like a thundercloud, about to break loose sweat and dirt, streaking his face, eyes burning with betrayal. Lucy jolted upright, her heartbeat thundering in her ears. One look at his expression, and she knew he knew. She rose unsteadily to her feet, pulse pounding in her throat. "Jeremiah." She started, her voice brittle with panic, but he held up a hand to silence her. "Are you pregnant?" he demanded, his words slicing through the air like a whip. Lucy froze, her breath catching. There was no more use pretending. No way to dodge, delay, or disguise. She nodded once, a trembling, guilty gesture, her eyes flooding with unshed tears. "Yes," she whispered. Jeremiah's jaw clenched. He stepped farther into the room, the wooden floor creaking ominously beneath his boots. "Is it mine?" That question struck her like a physical blow, even though she had expected it. Her voice cracked under the weight of truth and fear. "No, it's not." The silence that followed was unbearable. Jeremiah turned away for a moment, running a hand over his face, then gripping the back of a nearby chair as if he needed it to stay upright. When he turned back, his expression was contorted with anger and disbelief. "So you lied. You came here, accepted my offer, pretended to be someone you're not, all while carrying another man's child." Lucy stepped forward, hands outstretched. "Please, Jeremiah, listen to me. I didn't lie to hurt you. I was desperate. I had no one left, nowhere to go. I hoped I could start over." His face hardened. "Start over by deceiving me." I wanted to tell you, she insisted, tears sliding down her cheeks. Every day I tried to find the right moment, but I was afraid you'd turn me away if you knew, and I didn't know if I could survive being rejected again. Jeremiah laughed bitterly, shaking his head. Rejected Lucy. What do you think this is now? He pointed to her midsection voice, shaking with fury. You were going to let me believe this was my child. Build a life on a lie. I never meant to deceive you like that, she said, voice breaking. I just didn't know how to tell you. I was ashamed, and I thought maybe if we had time you'd come to care for me enough to understand. That's not how this works, he exploded. You don't get to trick a man into raising another man's child. Do you know what this would do to my reputation? My name? My ranch? Her shoulders sagged. Is that all that matters to you? Your name? Your reputation? He flinched as if struck. Out here, Lucy, those things are everything. You think people will just smile and nod while I play husband to a woman who lied to me and raise a bastard child that isn't mine? Don't call my baby that, Lucy whispered, trembling. Jeremiah's voice turned ice cold. You should have told me the moment you stepped off that train. Or better yet, not come at all. I asked for a wife, not a scandal. Lucy's knees buckled slightly, but she steadied herself against the bed frame. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. The man who did this to me promised to marry me. Then he vanished. My father threw me out. I had no choice but to look for a new life. And you thought you could dump your shame on me. He snapped his hands, clenching into fists. I thought I could build something honest with you, she said, softly, the words barely escaping her lips. Jeremiah's voice dropped heavy with bitterness. Get your things. You're leaving. You're not staying under this roof another night. Lucy gasped. Leave. Where would I go? I have nothing. That's not my problem, he said, turning away. She rushed toward him, desperate. Please, Jeremiah, I'll work. I'll do anything. Just don't send me out there alone. He paused at the door, his silhouette framed in harsh afternoon light. You should have thought of that before you boarded that train with a belly full of lies. And then slam. The door closed, cutting off the last hope she had for stability. Lucy crumpled to the floor, sobbing into her hands. The child stirred again within her, not knowing that the world outside had just turned a little colder. She sat there for what felt like hours, tears soaking her skirt, her breath coming in broken gasps. Eventually, she forced herself to move. Packing her few belongings into the same battered valise she had carried from Boston. Her hands trembled with every fold of fabric, every decision about what to bring, what to leave. There was no space for sentimentality now, only survival. When night fell, she lay in bed, wide-eyed, staring at the ceiling. The walls felt like they were closing in. Every tick of the clock, every creak of the house reminded her of the home she had just lost. Not because she was wicked, but because she had dared to hope. Outside, the wind whispered across the Kansas plains. Somewhere cattle lowed in the distance, but the ranch, once a place of promise, had turned silent and hostile. Lucy wrapped her arms around her belly and whispered to the child growing inside her. We'll keep going. I don't know how yet, but I promise I'll find a way. She didn't know where the road would lead her, only that she was on it alone again. But even in her despair, a flicker of defiance burned quietly in her chest, rejected but not broken, cast out but not defeated. Tomorrow she would rise. She had to. Lucy spent the night in agony, racked by fear for her unborn child. Jeremiah refused to speak to her. He locked himself in his own room, leaving her alone with her tears and a packed valise by her bed. She realized with mounting dread that she had only a few dollars left from her journey. It would be enough for a stagecoach fare out of Dodge, perhaps. But that was it. At dawn, she mustered what courage she had left and made her way to the main room. The table where she and Jeremiah had shared meals stood as a silent reminder of shattered expectations. She found Jeremiah there, hunched over a cup of coffee, eyes bloodshot from a sleepless night. A single glance at his hardened expression told Lucy that his mind was made up. "Cooper's taking the wagon into town," Jeremiah said without preamble, staring at the steam curling from his mug. "He'll drop you off at the railway station or wherever else you think you need to go." Lucy's stomach churned. "And that's it, I'm just gone." Jeremiah exhaled a bitter laugh. "What else can we do? Lucy marry under false pretenses, raise another man's child, all while folks in Dodge talk behind our backs." He slammed his palm on the table, causing the cup to rattle. "I'm done being lied to." She clasped her hands together, trying not to cry. "I never meant to hurt you. I was desperate. If you'd give me a chance, let me earn your trust." He silenced her with a cold glare. "Don't. Just don't. Pack your things. Cooper's leaving soon." Outside, the morning sun scorched an already tense atmosphere. Cooper, the stable hand, avoided meeting Lucy's gaze as he loaded her single trunk into the back of the wagon. She couldn't blame him. The ranch hands relied on Jeremiah for their livelihoods. No one would stand up for the pregnant woman who had deceived the boss, no matter her circumstances. With every jolting mile toward Dodge City, Lucy's heart pounded a funeral dirge for all the hopes she had nurtured. She had imagined building a home on that ranch, finding a measure of peace. Now she was back to where she started, a desperate woman alone on the frontier. When they reached the outskirts of Dodge, Cooper cleared his throat. "Ma'am, I'm sorry things didn't work out," he mumbled. "Jeremiah can be a decent man, but he ain't one for second chances." Lucy managed a trembling smile. "Thank you, Cooper. Take care." Then, as swiftly as an afterthought, the wagon rumbled away, leaving her stranded outside a modest boarding house. She had no plan, no husband, and a child on the way. The dusty streets of Dodge City stretched before her, littered with saloons, stables, and uncertain prospects. Lucy swallowed her fear. She had to find shelter, some means of sustenance. It was more than just her life at stake now. She trudged down Front Street, scanning for a boarding house sign. Above her, the relentless sun hammered down, and the faint stirrings inside her womb reminded her that she would need far more than a roof soon. She whispered a silent prayer, hoping someone, anyone, might extend a hand of mercy in this unforgiving land. The drab facade of Mrs. Wilcox's boarding house came into view beneath the flicker of a worn wooden sign. Its peeling paint and creaking shutters hinted at a modest establishment, but one that might be affordable for a woman of Lucy's dwindling means. She pushed open the door, stepping into a narrow foyer that smelled faintly of cabbage and old coffee. Behind a small desk, a stout woman with graying hair, pinned in a severe bun, looked up from a ledger. A pair of spectacles rested on the bridge of her nose, and her expression was businesslike. Morning, she greeted, eyeing Lucy up and down. "You need a room." Lucy brushed dust from her skirts, summoning what little composure she had left. "Yes, ma'am. Just for a short while." I don't have much in the way of funds, but I can pay for a few days. Perhaps if you need any help with chores." Mrs. Wilcox's shrewd gaze flickered to Lucy's belly, and then back to her pale, anxious face. "You alone?" she asked, her voice softened by the faintest trace of concern. Lucy hesitated, tears threatening to spill again. She nodded. My situation changed suddenly. I'm afraid I have nowhere else to go." Mrs. Wilcox pressed her lips into a thin line, as though weighing Lucy's honesty. After a pause, she dipped her quill into the inkwell. "You can have room number 4. Payments due daily. I don't run a charity, but you do look like you could use a break." An overwhelming wave of relief engulfed Lucy. "Thank you. I promise I'll do my best to earn your kindness." Once upstairs, Lucy entered the small room that would be her refuge. A narrow bed rested against a wall next to a single window overlooking the dusty street. A chipped basin stood on a rickety dresser, and a cracked mirror hung from a hook. It was nothing like the space Jeremiah had provided on the ranch, but it was hers for now. She sank onto the bed, gripping the frame to steady herself as dizziness washed over her. The events of the past few days caught up in a dizzying swirl. Her hopes of marriage, the devastating reveal Jeremiah's anger, and the indefinite future she now faced. She thought of Boston, her father's stern face, when she'd told him she was with child, his ultimatum that she either find a husband or never return to his home. It was that threat and the heartbreak of being abandoned by the baby's father that had driven her to the mail order ad. Now it seemed she was caught in a loop of rejection and disgrace. Despite her fears, Lucy found solace in a simple truth: she wasn't out in the streets. She had a roof over her head, if only for a little while. Perhaps she told herself she could find work in Dodge mending clothes cleaning rooms, anything to keep her afloat until the baby came. She pressed a hand to her belly. "We'll find a way," she murmured, though her voice quavered with uncertainty. Her thoughts drifted to Jeremiah, that stoic figure she had hurt so deeply. She knew she was partly to blame, but a thread of resentment tugged at her heart. He'd cast her out without listening to her story or offering any grace. Was all the talk of frontier hospitality just a myth? Or was her lie too great to forgive? Lucy tried to push away the bitterness, focusing instead on the bare-bones plan in front of her. Survive today, then tomorrow and the next, until some path revealed itself. Thunder rumbled in the distance, echoing the unrest in her heart. But for now, in this shabby boarding room, Lucy clung to the hope that she could carve out a second chance yet again. A day later, Lucy stood at the window staring at the bustling scene below. Cowboys led their horses along the thoroughfare, a stagecoach thundered in, carrying weary travelers, and saloon doors swung open to the rowdy calls of patrons. Dodge City was alive, pulsing with money, and opportunity for some despair, and ruin for others. For Lucy it was a crossroads. Reluctantly she left the boarding house in search of work. She wandered down Front Street, scanning for help-wanted signs in shop windows. Most proprietors gave her the once-over and shook their heads. They didn't need a pregnant woman behind the counter, especially one with no letters of recommendation or local references. Lucy's anxiety mounted with each refusal. By midday, her feet ached and hunger gnawed at her stomach. She sank onto a bench outside the Long Branch Saloon, a well-known establishment that had once been frequented by the likes of Bat Masterson and Wyatt Earp, names she recognized from the Boston papers. The place loomed large, its swinging doors revealing spur-clanking cowboys and heavily perfumed saloon girls. It was a world she'd never imagined stepping into, yet desperation was pushing her closer to its threshold. Just as Lucy was about to rise and continue her fruitless search, a tall stranger emerged from the saloon. He was lean with a clean-shaven jaw and a battered hat tilted low over keen blue eyes. A wry grin hovered on his lips as he scanned the street, then paused when he noticed Lucy slumped on the bench. "You all right, ma'am?" he asked, his voice tinged with genuine concern. "You look like you're about to faint." Lucy stiffened, not wanting to appear helpless. "I'm fine, thank you," she lied, pressing her hand discreetly against her belly. Despite her words, a wave of dizziness threatened to topple her. The man approached, a gentle caution in his steps. "I'd say otherwise. Here, let me get you some water." He disappeared through the swinging doors of the saloon and returned moments later with a tin cup. Lucy accepted it, gratefully sipping the cool water. The relief was immediate, and she murmured her thanks. "Name's Colt," he said, tipping his hat. "Colt Remington." "You new in town?" Lucy hesitated. She'd grown wary of confiding in strangers, but she couldn't deny his kindness. "Yes, recently arrived. Looking for work," she answered, voice trembling slightly. Colt nodded. "It's not easy for a woman on her own here, especially if she's—" His gaze dropped to her abdomen for a flicker, and Lucy's cheeks flushed, expecting she finished for him. "No, it's not easy." The sincerity in his eyes put her somewhat at ease. "Well, Miss—" "Lucy. Lucy Addison." "Miss Addison," Colt repeated, rolling the name on his tongue. "If there's anything I can do to help, let me know. Dodge City can be a rough place, but it's also full of folks just trying to get by. I figure if we can help each other, that's the decent thing to do." Lucy eyed him warily, but found no trace of cruelty or ulterior motive in his gaze. She offered a timid smile. "Thank you, Mr. Remington. I may just take you up on that." As he tipped his hat and walked away, Lucy felt a tremor of cautious hope. For a moment, the swirl of uncertainty that shadowed her seemed to recede. She didn't know it yet, but this chance encounter would set in motion events that would challenge her understanding of loyalty, sacrifice, and unexpected love on the unforgiving frontier. Over the next several days, Lucy found herself crossing paths with Colt Remington more often. Each time, it was a casual greeting or a brief conversation, but something about his genuine warmth and steady composure calmed her frayed nerves. She learned that Colt was a drifter of sorts, working odd jobs or trailing outlaws for bounty when the chance arose. He had a reputation for fairness, and though his methods could be colorful, people in Dodge City generally respected him. Lucy secured temporary work washing dishes at a small eatery near the station, earning barely enough to cover her daily rent at Mrs. Wilcox's. She refused to complain. At least it put food in her belly and kept a roof over her head for now. Each day was a struggle, and the weight of her pregnancy grew heavier. The child needed rest, nutrition, and stability, none of which Lucy could confidently provide. One evening, as the sun dipped low over the rolling plains, Lucy left the eatery, exhausted and anxious. She spotted Colt leaning against a lamppost, hat tipped back, as he caught the dying rays of light on his face. He straightened when he saw her concern lighting his eyes. "You look dead on your feet, Miss Addison," he remarked. "You headin' back to the boarding house?" She nodded wearily, stepping onto the boardwalk. "Yes, another long day." Colt fell into step beside her. "Could I walk with you?" She hesitated. A solitary woman in Dodge had to be cautious, especially with a near stranger. But Colt's past kindness nudged her to trust him. "All right," she agreed softly. As they strolled along the dusty street, Lucy caught glimpses of the boisterous saloons, the swirl of prostitutes trying to lure drunken cowboys, and the occasional vigilance of the local lawman. The grit and unpredictability of Dodge weighed on her, reminding her she was alone, except for the child within her. They reached Mrs. Wilcox's boarding house, and Colt paused at the bottom step. "Lucy, I've been hearing things," he said, voice low. "People talk in a town like this. I know about your situation out at Jeremiah Caldwell's ranch, how he sent you packing. Folks say you're pregnant, and it's not his." A heavy ache spread through Lucy. Shame, frustration, and heartbreak merged into a single, sharp sting. "Yes, it's true," she admitted. "He found out, and, well, now I'm here trying to figure out what to do." Colt's brow furrowed. "And you don't have any family to turn to?" She shook her head, tears prickling her eyes. "They wouldn't take me back. Not like this." She steeled herself. "Why do you ask? Are you going to judge me too?" Surprise flickered across Colt's face, followed by a gentle look of understanding. "No, Lucy, I'm not. Frontier life ain't for the faint of heart. People do what they must to survive. I have a proposition." Lucy held her breath, fear and curiosity warring within her. "What kind of proposition?" Colt glanced around the deserted street, then back to her. "I might not look like much, but I've got a little saved. Enough to maybe set us up on a small homestead, or even keep you in decent shape till the baby's born. If you'd let me, I'd like to help you. And I don't mean charity. I mean, maybe you'd consider letting me lay claim to the child." Silence filled the space between them, the night air growing cold. Lucy's chest tightened, and she found it suddenly hard to breathe. Why she whispered, overwhelmed. "Why would you do that for someone you barely know?" Colt's lips curved into a wistful half-smile. "I guess I'm not a stranger to being thrown out by folks who were supposed to care. If I can spare you and your baby, Fate, maybe that's worth something." Lucy's tears finally spilled over. "I don't know what to say. It's such a generous offer, but are you sure?" His voice was firm, yet gentle. "I'm sure. You think it over. If you decide yes, I'll stand by you as the father, and we'll figure out the rest together. If you decide no, I'll still help you any way I can." In the glow of a single lamp-post, Lucy nodded, heart pounding with a mix of gratitude and uncertainty. The strangest sense of peace settled over her. For the first time in many months, she felt a flicker of hope. "I'll think about it," she promised, stepping into the boarding house. Up in her small room, Lucy stared into the cracked mirror, cheeks still damp with tears. Was this a trap, a pity move, or something deeper? She pressed a hand to her belly, breathing out a shaken laugh. Colt Remington, a rugged stranger, offered to stand as her child's father. It was a wild idea, perhaps even crazier than the mail-order bride scheme. But if Lucy had learned anything from her short time on the frontier, it was this: sometimes the most outlandish chance at salvation might be the only one you get. News traveled fast in Dodge City, and before Lucy could even come to terms with Colt's proposal, rumors began to swirl. The tale of the pregnant mail-order bride, abandoned by Jeremiah Caldwell, sparked curiosity and word that Colt Remington had taken an interest in her raised eyebrows. Dodge City thrived on gossip as much as it thrived on cattle drives. Lucy worried that Colt might lose face among his peers for associating with her, yet whenever they passed on the streets or shared a quick meal in the local cafe, he seemed unabashed. In fact, he'd tip his hat and greet folks in that same casual, amiable way, as if standing by Lucy was the most natural thing in the world. One afternoon, Lucy mustered the courage to give him her answer. They met at a quiet spot near the river, where willows trailed their green branches in the water. The gentle rush of the current provided a soothing backdrop as they stood together on the bank. Colt Lucy began, her hands trembling, even though she tried to appear composed. "I've thought about your proposition. I need you to understand what you're getting into. The father of this child, he's gone, and he never intended to help me. This baby will need a stable home, a future. If you and I do this, it means you're stepping into a father's role. That's a lot to ask." Colt locked his eyes on hers, sincerity illuminating his features. "I know. I also know that life out here doesn't offer many second chances. If we do this, it'll be real. I'm not offering to help out, just so I can skip town later." Lucy's pulse raced, gratitude and anxiety fighting for space in her chest. Are we talking about marriage?" she asked, barely above a whisper. He nodded, clearing his throat. "Yes, marriage. We claim each other, me as your husband, you as my wife, and the little one as ours. It'll protect you from folks' judgments, and it'll give us a foothold to build something. It won't be easy, though. I might have to ride out sometimes on jobs, and the money's not always steady." Her breath caught in her throat. She saw the potential for heartbreak in his words, but also the potential for genuine acceptance. "I've survived heartbreak before," she admitted, voice trembling. "But for this child, I need something solid." Colt reached out, gently taking her hand. "I can't promise we'll never face tough times, but I promise that I won't run out on you like that other fella did." A tear slipped down Lucy's cheek. This was the second time she'd faced a marriage vow built on precarious circumstances, yet something felt different, more honest, more purposeful. She saw kindness in Colt, the kind of kindness that could be the bedrock of a real family. She squeezed his hand. "Then I accept. Let's face Dodge City together, and whatever else comes our way." Colt exhaled, a weight lifting from his shoulders. He drew her closer, pressing his forehead against hers in a gesture more tender than Lucy had ever known. The river whispered, and in that moment, Lucy felt like she had found an oasis in the desert of her life, a fragile hope that might just stand firm against the harsh winds of fate. Word of Lucy and Colt's engagement spread through Dodge City like prairie fire. Mrs. Wilcox offered polite congratulations, but Lucy sensed the boarding house matron was wary about any arrangement forged so hastily. Nevertheless, the fear that had haunted Lucy since Jeremiah's rejection receded. She clung to Colt's unwavering confidence, believing that together they could carve out a life. But the frontier had a way of testing even the most determined hearts. That test arrived in the form of Jeremiah Caldwell, who rode into Dodge one hot afternoon and spotted Lucy on the porch of the Mercantile. She was examining bolts of fabric for a simple wedding dress, with Colt standing by her side, carefully weighing the cost. The moment Lucy felt Jeremiah's gaze on her, her heart lurched. Jeremiah dismounted, face darkening with anger as he approached. "Lucy!" he barked. "What the hell is this?" Colt stepped in, voice calm but firm. "Back off, Jeremiah. You made your choice." Jeremiah glared at him, then back to Lucy, who felt an icy shiver down her spine. "You're marrying him," Jeremiah spat. "You were in my house on my ranch, a liar and a cheat, carrying another man's child. Now you're parading around with him." Lucy bristled. She might have been intimidated once, but something about Colt's steady presence emboldened her. "You're the one who threw me out, Jeremiah," she replied, keeping her voice steady. "You didn't want to hear the truth. You just wanted me gone. Colt gave me a chance when you wouldn't." Jeremiah's eyes flickered with conflicting emotions: anger, regret, and perhaps even jealousy. He gestured at Lucy's belly. "And you're going to raise that bastard as if it's his own?" Colt's jaw tightened. "Watch your mouth. That child's innocent, and I'll be proud to call it mine." The tension crackled like gunpowder. Bystanders along the boardwalk paused to watch the confrontation, ready for a fight. Jeremiah's fists clenched, but he made no move to draw his gun. Lucy guessed he was too conscious of his reputation and the potential fallout if he started a brawl over a woman he'd already rejected. "This is your last warning," Colt continued in a low voice. "You turned her away. Now she's under my protection." Jeremiah's lips curled in a sneer. "Protection? She won't find much security with a drifter like you. You're just playing the hero. How long before you cut and run too?" The jab stung, but Colt stood firm, unflinching. "Not your concern anymore." Lucy couldn't help but see the flicker of pain in Jeremiah's eyes. Beneath his anger, she sensed a man grappling with his pride, but it was too late for regrets. She had found a lifeline in Colt, someone willing to stand by her through scorn and hardship. Jeremiah turned on his heel and stormed back to his horse, throwing one last glare over his shoulder. "Fine, Lucy. If you want to chain yourself to a gambler and a bounty chaser, do it. But don't come crawling back to me when he disappoints you." With that, he mounted and spurred his horse away, leaving a cloud of dust and a trail of questions. Lucy exhaled a shaky breath. Colt's hand found hers warm and reassuring. Despite the tremor in her stomach, Lucy met his gaze and gave a small nod. They'd weathered Jeremiah's wrath once more, and somehow she felt stronger for it. The wedding was a modest affair, just a quick ceremony officiated by the circuit-riding preacher who happened to pass through Dodge City. Mrs. Wilcox allowed the parlor of her boarding house to serve as the makeshift chapel, and a few curious townsfolk gathered to witness the unlikely union. Lucy wore a simple cream-colored dress she had sewn from discounted fabric, and Colt donned his best vest and a neatly brushed hat. As they stood before the preacher, Lucy trembled with a mixture of joy and fear. This was not the life she had envisioned for herself in Boston, a swift marriage to a man she had known only for a short time, far from any relatives or old friends. Yet there was something undeniably right about it. Colt held her gaze steadily, his fingers threaded through hers, promising her in unspoken terms that he would never abandon her as so many others had. The preacher recited solemn words about love, commitment, and caring for one another in the eyes of God. Lucy choked up, remembering her first fiancé, how quickly that dream had crumbled. Yet here she was, forging a new path, not driven by naive romance, but by trust, respect, and hope. When she and Colt exchanged vows, the room fell silent, the gravity of their promise resonating in every corner. For better or worse, they were binding themselves to a life that, while uncertain, bristled with possibility. After the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Colt leaned in and pressed a gentle kiss to Lucy's forehead. No thunderous applause, followed only a quiet murmur of well-wishes from the small group of onlookers. But to Lucy, it might as well have been a grand celebration. They found a small cabin on the outskirts of Dodge. Nothing fancy, just a single-room structure with a sturdy roof and enough land for a small vegetable garden. Lucy and Colt spent the following days cleaning, repairing, and preparing for the arrival of the baby. Neighbours were sparse in that stretch of land, but a kind farm wife named Ethel Farnsworth visited and offered Lucy tips on everything from planting potatoes to midwifery advice. Each evening, Lucy and Colt ate supper by the flickering lamplight, forging a routine that felt almost domestic. Sometimes Colt would regale her with tales of his bounty hunting days, how he'd tracked stagecoach robbers across the plains or helped break up a gang holed up near the Cimarron River. Lucy in turn shared bits of her past, carefully omitting the names and faces that still haunted her. If Colt suspected there was more, she wasn't saying he never pushed. Gradually, her belly swelled to a point where Lucy could no longer ignore the baby's insistent nudges. Colt would smile whenever he felt the unborn child kick against his palm, an awe lighting his eyes that made Lucy's heart swell. She recognized in Colt a gentle tenderness, a capacity for fatherhood she never expected in a man of his background. One crisp morning, while Colt worked on reinforcing a fence line, Lucy stood by the porch and looked out over the sun-kissed grasses. The Kansas wind rustled the wildflowers, and for a moment she closed her eyes, remembering the desolate sense of hopelessness she'd once carried. It seemed a lifetime ago that she'd arrived in Dodge City alone, pregnant and rejected. Here with Colt, she found not only survival, but the promise of a family. The child in her womb might never know its biological father, but it would know love, devotion, and the steadfast presence of a man who chose them despite everything. Yet life on the frontier never offered complete peace. Jeremiah Caldwell's words lingered in Lucy's mind. "Don't come crawling back to me when he disappoints you." She knew that a clash with Jeremiah's pride might still loom on the horizon. The rancher's resentment over Lucy's public rejection, justified or not, could spark new conflicts, especially if tongues kept wagging about Lucy's baby and Colt's claim. But for now, Lucy pushed those fears aside. Each day was a gift, every sunset, a quiet victory over the darkness that had once threatened to consume her. The story of Lucy Addison and Colt Remington echoes along Dodge City's dusty streets, a testament that compassion can flourish in the unlikeliest of places. They built a life on trust, earned the hard way, turning scandal and heartbreak into a foundation for family. In time, the baby was born healthy, nestled in arms that would never let go. To those who find themselves on life's rough frontier alone, rejected and out of options, let Lucy's journey stand as a beacon. Help can come from a stranger. Fate can twist in startling ways. The West is wild, but within that wildness, there's a place where hope meets resilience. Call to action. If this story stirred your heart, please like this video, share it with friends, and subscribe to the channel for more tales of love, hardship, and redemption on the dusty trails of the Old West and beyond. Your support keeps these stories alive. Thank you for riding alongside us on this journey.